Hi, welcome back to the Benchmarkers Rugby Show. My name is Kumbi, I'm your host. And Six Nations is back, so which means we're back, right? So this is the first bit of Test match rugby that we've had since the Rugby World Cup. And the first weekend was massive. We started off with a massive game between Ireland and France, the top two teams, I think one would assume, in the Six Nations. We also had a big game, a close game between England and Italy, right? So maybe it was a little bit closer than it looked on the scoreboard because Italy scored really late try. But the game we're going to be looking at, a very interesting, a weird game between Wales and Scotland. And that one was I think it was the closest game. Yeah, it was the closest game of the weekend. Right, let's jump straight into it, right? So we're going to start off with the overview of the game, right? So obviously the game finished off 26 points to 27. The game was played at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, Wales, right? So Wales lost by 1 point, 26 to 27. And we'll break down the game a little bit because, that looks a little bit close. Maybe you'd think maybe it was like, one team scoring, the next team scores. No, if you watch the game, no, that is not how it played out. But just to break down the points, right, and just overall stats of the whole game, we had Wales scored 4 tries, which means they got 2 bonus points out of the game, right? So for losing within 7 points and for scoring 4 tries, Scotland scored 3 tries. All of Scotland's tries were converted, 3 conversions, and then Wales missed 1 conversion. Maybe that was a little bit costly, but they did, I think the conversion that was missed was from out wide. So, that's, maybe you could have said that try should have been a penalty try. There's an argument there to be made, but they did miss a conversion from out wide. And then Scotland took 2 penalties and Wales didn't take any, but they did score the tries from the penalties that they refused to go for post for. And then just the overall possession for the game, Wales had 54% possession and 54% territory, right? That could be 56. I'm not too sure. The number I'm seeing now is 54 for both, but if you see a different number, it means I've corrected after I've recorded, right? So it looks like a very close game, right? But I think the thing is, this was a very weird game. This was the definition of a game of 2 halves because Scotland had basically the first half of the game, right? So they scored 27 unanswered points, not in the actual first half, but then their last points were in the 42nd minute, right? So practically the half of the game, right? And then they were done. And then it's almost as if just as they scored their last points, Wales, it became a completely different game. Wales became a completely different team, and so did Scotland. And then Wales scored their 26 unanswered points for that second half of the game as well. Right, so it was a very weird one, right? So if we just to go to look at the game control, we've broken down the possession and the territory just to show you what it was like between the halves. And the one that I just want to focus on is the possession, right? Because Wales had 46% possession, which means Scotland had 54% in the first half. And then, like I said, in the second half, they just flipped on its head, right? So Wales had 62% possession, right? So which is a massive number. And then Scotland had 38% possession in the second half. And then territory was 55 for Wales in the first half, and then 54 for Wales in the second half as well. Right. So before we get into the stats, let's just go over what, just the overall important key points that happened in the game, right? So like we said in the first half, Scotland had, they did well. They scored their first and last 27 points. And what happened in that 27 points, I think the main thing was the kicking, right? Wales's kicking was terrible. Their kicking game was awful. I think the commentators were actually really, I think it was a Welsh commentator, I don't know what his name is, but he was just going off on them because they had a terrible chase. They had a terrible chase line. They were kicking a little bit too deep. Their kicks weren't contestable, basically, right? And on the other hand, even though Scotland had a better game, I think Finn Russell did really well, right? So he got a 50-22, he kicked behind the defense, and even the ones that were contestable, they were getting the rush or the chase was getting there as the Wales were catching the ball. But also, they also did have their moments as well where they might have kicked a little bit too early. There was a couple of cross kicks from Finn Russell, but the kicking was what really broke down the defense. Obviously, they also had a really good lineout, which was affected when Jamie Ritchie came off late in the first half. But because of their kicking, sorry about that, because of their kicking, they did manage to break down the defense, and they had 3 tries, 2 tries in the first half by Schoolman. That was off a little break that was, set off by Finn Russell. And then really late in the first half as well, Duhan van der Merwe, he also scored a try off of Finn Russell breaking the line, and then just a little bit of a pass to Duhan. And then the try that they scored to wrap up their 27 points early in the second half, that was a little, once again, Wales kick, and there's not a good chase. The line is broken down, so there's a lot of gaps, for the attackers to get through. Finn Russell just gets through and then does that little offload that you do, that backyard offload to Duhan. And then look, if you're an opposition player, you don't want to see Duhan in space, right? So that's not a sight that you want to see. And, once Duhan was there, he, went around the defender and they scored. So that was basically, so I think kicking was the most important thing that happened in the first half, right? And then as soon as that Duhan try happened early in the first half, it's almost as if Scotland just said, listen, we've won the game. We're done, and we can basically just test the ref. We can do whatever we want. So their discipline, I know Finn Russell did comment on this after the game, where he said, listen, it's like you're telling people not to go into the ruck, but they continuing to go into the ruck. So their discipline at the breakdown, their discipline in the tackle, and their scrum, those were terrible. In fact, their scrum was actually bad even when they were dominating the game. So that allowed, sorry about that, that allowed Wales to get back into the game, to give them field possession. They got a couple of mauls, and because of that, Scotland got a couple of yellow cards. Off the back of those 2 yellow cards, for I think it was Tuipolotu, that was the second one. I'm forgetting what the first one was. But as soon as they got each of those yellow cards, Wales scored, right? So it was a matter of discipline. And obviously Wales also then, we'll look at the stats in a little bit, but their line out got a little bit, they got their line out a little bit together in that second half. And yeah, but ultimately, unfortunately for Wales, that was not enough to win the game. So basically, 26 points for Wales in the second half, 27 points for Scotland. I know it's not really the second half. I mean, in the first half, I know they scored 7 points in the, early in the second half, but I'm just going to call it the first half of the game, right? So that is how the game played out. So we're just going to break down the stats, right, and the different aspects of the game, and look at how they played out for how the, for the whole entire game. Right, for scrums. Now, scrums was a very interesting one. I did mention that Scotland didn't have a good scrum. So Wales had 75%, 3 out of 4 for their scrums. Scotland had 44%, which is a ridiculous number, right? So they had 4 out of their 9 scrums. That was crazy. And then lineouts, Wales had 14 out of 20. I think 4 of those were in the first half. 4 of the lineouts that they lost out of the 6 were in the first half. I think Jamie Ritchie going off for Scotland is it Jamie Ritchie? Richie Gray, sorry. When he got off in the first half, obviously when you've got someone of that caliber going off, there's less pressure on the Welsh line out there. So I think Wales actually did benefit. Their line out got a little bit more stable, so they didn't lose as much in the second half. And then for Scotland, they had 4 out of 6. So both teams will probably want to improve when it comes to the line out, given their history as well. And then in the attack, so you'll see the attacking numbers favors Wales, right? So for defenders beaten 20 and 13 meters, because they had more possession overall in the game, they had 445 versus 370 for Scotland. But the handling areas, they dropped the ball in key areas, probably, the last 10 minutes of the game, because they scored their last points in, I think, the 69th minute. The last 10 minutes, they made some mistakes there that, they probably, I think they lost a line out. That was key. They also dropped a couple of balls. So that's, that's something that they are probably going to look at as something that they want to improve going forward. Scotland, though, because I think this is more for Finn Russell stats, the offloads, right? So I think that's the excitement machine, right? Obviously, the other teams, a lot of the teams, I think 4 of the teams are missing their key 10s, either due to retirement, injury, whatever. From Johnny Sexton to Intermark to Dan Bigger, all these teams are missing, Owen Farrell. They're missing their key 10s, right? So right now, this is basically Finn Russell's show. The Six Nations will be. So I think that's probably going to be a massive player to watch. And then kicking meters. So I thought Wales would have more kicking meters because they were kicking a little bit too long. But I think overall, because Scotland were trying to clear the ball in the second half, and also I think because of the kicks that, Finn Russell made in the second half where he was kicking behind the defense and he managed to get some space. That then, ticked the number up for Scotland a little bit. But yeah, the kicking game for Wales that they'll definitely want to improve that on that. And then finally the defense, because obviously for Scotland to win the game finally, the defense wasn't great in the second half, but I think they made some they had some key moments for them to win the game. They had 89% tackle success versus Wales. Wales, which had 92%. That's impressive, right? But I think for Scotland, probably, 89 is good, but you probably want to be in the 90s in Test rugby. Penalties conceded. We talked about the discipline. Scotland had 16. Wales had 4. And then turnovers 1. So this is the key area. This is the key stat, right? So I think Scotland had 11 and then Wales had 4. I think 3 were probably from their number 7. I'm forgetting what his name is, Tommy Rafal, right? So 3 of them were probably by him, 2 or 3 of them. He had a really good game at the breakdown. And then 2 yellow cards, which were a result of Scotland's indiscipline. So basically, that's how the game played out. It was a game of 2 halves, right? And it was a very interesting game. And had you asked me for my opinion, if you had said, listen, I know I get predictions wrong on this channel all the time, but if you had asked me to do a prediction of the table before the tournament started, or just to create a power ranking of some sort, I probably would have said Wales comes last, because Wales have had some problems with availability, whether it's due to injury. Lewis Rees-Zammit, he's opted for like an NFL pathway and all these things. So Wales are really struggling. If you really think about the starting lineup, people would have made the starting lineup. Rowlands, I'm not sure if he usually starts. They were missing Jack Morgan, they were missing Taulupe Faletau, Dan Bigger, George North, Liam Williams. All these players will start, and they've played well in the World Cup, right? And they were missing these players, right? And I think that will probably affect availability in general, probably affect Wales. And I think they're probably going to have a rough couple of years. So they'll be a very interesting team to see. So, like teams like France and all these things with guys like Dupont missing. So the Six Nations is going to be a very interesting tournament to watch. We're going to be here for it, as usual. I say that, and yet we missed the last few weeks of European rugby. But from now on, we're going to be a little bit more consistent. So hopefully you're going to come with us, along with us on the journey. It's going to be a massive year for rugby, and we're looking forward to covering it and talking about it with you guys throughout the year. All right. So hopefully this video was informative, I guess. Hopefully you enjoyed the game, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
At Start Experience.